have an easy task now to introduce myself. As I mentioned, I'm Paul Wuebben, the Senior Director of Renewable Fuels here at Carbon Recycling International. Just real briefly, I started my career as an EPA Fellow at Harvard in the School of Public Health. I had a 30-year, very enjoyable and meaningful career, I think, in the regulatory sector at the South Coast AQMD. I've been an advisor for the California Environmental Protection Agency. I've been involved with a wide range of alternative fuel vehicles and their development and gestation, and probably one of the most proudest aspects of that was the creation and the assistance in developing the California Methanol program. So with that, I thought that's a little bit of background. I'm going to try to squeeze my comments into about an 8 to 10 minute presentation. These presentations will all be available on a website that we're going to establish, so you won't feel that you're missing anything. But I did want to go over real quickly what the basic objectives of our meetings are, what the meeting today is, and that is we want to really identify the high value opportunities for enhancing the efficiency and performance and the overall value proposition of methanol vehicles. So we really, our main focus is particularly in a follow-on working group tomorrow, to identify what projects we think would be of highest priority to advance the state of the art. And with that, we're really looking at what would make sense to expand vehicle fleet trials, what kind of large public and private fleet deployments would be feasible, both here in Iceland and in the wider European market, and also what infrastructure needs to develop and under what standards and what process to guide that. So we're focused, I think, initially and primarily in the light duty and marine heavy duty segments, but of course this remains a kind of a moving template, if you will. And as I mentioned, we are going to be convening a working group tomorrow of selected technical experts to really put more meat on the bone, if you will, on the specific kind of follow-on activities, because this kind of meeting can really establish a lot of energy, and we want to tap that energy into something that's pragmatic but also meaningful going forward. And to really help drive that, one of the major benefits and goals that we have of this meeting is to create a methanol vehicle development alliance. And I know our colleagues in various auto manufacturers and in the industry, even at the Methanol Institute itself has certainly indicated some interest in these kind of alliances. We're focusing in this one on the vehicle and engine development aspects. I think it's just useful to summarize, step back a little bit, to realize that the key drivers, and obviously the COP21 meeting in Paris several months ago was an extremely important energizer that's really propelling major auto manufacturers and every major segment of the economy to consider how to reduce carbon emissions and create a sustainable set of transportation options. We understand that there is strict and increasingly stringent fuel economy requirements globally and particularly in Europe. We think that also has relevance, obviously, in China. They have very strict standards that they're continuing to roll out. There's certainly an interest in and a demand, really, for scalable solutions. And one of the great, I think, reflections of how scalable our technology is, the capacity we have at the plant right now has we're utilizing thousands of megawatt hours. The annual utilization capacity of the plant that we have in place on an annual basis is nearly 40 to 50,000 megawatt hours of renewable power that's essentially being transposed into the transportation segment. The amount of hydrogen that we're producing from renewable sources at our plant is a larger deployment of hydrogen into the transportation pool than the entire global fuel cell vehicle fleet. That's quite a statement. It's also a larger deployment of renewable electricity for transportation purposes than the entire California electric vehicle program. Now, I say that with a lot of pride in this helping establish the California program. I was the chairman of the California Electric Vehicle Task Force in 1990. That was, of course, the year when the Air Resources Board adopted the famous ZEV mandate that has created a tremendous amount of effort on electric drivetrain development, and we're happy to see that commercialization. In fact, we're convinced that there's a great synergy and marriage that can exist between electric drive technology and methanol engine technology, and the key bridge, of course, is clean electricity as power through the transportation segment as renewable methanol. That's the power, really, of liquids rather than just transporting electrons. So of course we realize that there has to be a great cost discipline in order to establish a value proposition to the customer, and also the agility that's going to be needed in a increasingly uncertain world in terms of oil price, either prices, supply, regional instabilities, et cetera. We realize that there's a current extremely low oil price environment, but virtually no one can really predict the future. I just wanted to mention real briefly that there are tremendous advantages to methanol that we're going to build on. It has no carbon-carbon bond, so that gives us an inherent emissions advantage. It has an elegant means of blending with gasoline, what are called the GEM gasoline ethanol methanol blends, which provide a tremendous amount of flexibility, agility, because they have the same octane, the same latent heat of vaporization, the same energy content if you blend to those certain ratios. And even flexible fuel vehicles, of course, offer meaningful opportunities. And the M100 vehicle you see out here has, when it's operating on M100, it has 0 benzene emissions, for example. We realize that there's a robust database to build on. And I just thought I'd show this quick picture, some of the early work that was done on early flexible fuel dedicated methanol vehicles. There's a picture of me many years ago standing with one of the fathers of the California programs, sitting next to the world's first flexible fuel vehicle. And of course we have, following in that tradition, both the vehicle outside by Geely and of course the developments by CRI in the fuel cell arena. And I thought I'd also just take a special note of the history that I've had a real fortune to be involved in this industry. It's been a real privilege, honestly. But you can see from that picture taken by a journalist back in the days, trying to urge Volvo to broaden their template, and indeed they came back with that car on the right there. It's their environmental concept car from the 1990s, and actually that vehicle had high compression and it had a lower BTU per mile consumption than the gasoline. So it really showed even at that time what the potential was. And of course we step forward, there's great leadership going on. This is a picture of the fleet of Geely taxis that is in use in Germany and China. And of course the vehicle outside is a remarkable milestone that we should all be proud of and try to do everything we can to make that successful. And then of course looking forward, we see a real application to high temperature proton exchange membrane fuel cell technology using methanol with reformers, for example. And here's an example that we'll hear more about later this afternoon from CRI. I don't want to go into a lot of details because I think we want to try to catch up on time, and I'm especially interested in hearing from Fiat. But one thing I did want to point to is that when you look at methanol technology, it's really a matter of building on the strengths of what we already know in terms of its octane and latent heat properties, but also what's happened in the vehicle engine evolution has been nothing short of spectacular in terms of Atkinson cycle and Otto cycle integration optimization. There's been research that suggests that methanol could actually be even more efficient than Atkinson cycles. And of course, all the well-known hybrids that are out there, the Prius, the Volt, or now Bolt, those plug-in hybrids are all utilized, and the basic leading hybrids utilize the Atkinson cycle. So there's some opportunities. I did want to just mention briefly that there is one person that we would have liked to have been here, and I know Jamie Turner, well, he sends his regrets that he was committed to another meeting, but his work originally at Lotus and now at Bath has created a tremendous amount of knowledge about the gem elegance, as I refer to it. And so I think that we have a lot to gain from looking seriously at a lot of the work that they've done. Just to finalize, I think that the key building blocks for building market confidence are to create expanded fleet trials for the M100 vehicles we have, maybe even plug-in hybrid FFVs using gem blends, which would use the optimal use of renewable methanol, and even in a fuel cell environment. We think that there's certainly there's a feasible path, if not immediately, but certainly with others, Euro 6 compliance should be just around the corner. So with that, I think that some of the opportunities that exist happen to be this vehicle and its next generation partner. We're optimistic that perhaps working with others like Fiat, that we can build on that experience. As I mentioned, applying methanol to direct injection technology, turbocharging that, along with Atkinson cycle, optimizing that, could be quite exciting. And of course, one thing we're especially happy to be partners in terms of the industry and looking to work more closely with Stena is their great leadership in applying methanol in the ferry applications. So we see opportunities for expanding methanol use in small engine retrofits, in dedicated new small engines, and large retrofits, et cetera, and even up to ocean going. And obviously the work of Methanex in that arena has been important. Here's some NOx and PM and efficiency data that suggests that these offer very significant environmental benefits. And remember, this is not a low sulfur fuel. When you're on methanol, you're not using a low sulfur fuel. You're not using an ultra low sulfur fuel. You're using a zero sulfur fuel. And so, as we look to future relevance to, increasingly challenging environmental goals, that has a role to play. So the last thing I'd like to do is just lay out our vision of a basic charter for an alliance and issue really an invitation to key stakeholders here that we'd like to create an alliance with many stakeholders here in a collaborative, cooperative manner to establish an effective and expedited development process for deployment of this technology and identifying one of the key opportunities. We know people at MIT have great ideas in Bath as well, and Lund and Ghent universities, that we can really work together to identify these priorities. So we'd like to solicit some membership. We're hopeful to generate some specific projects that come out of that, and we're anticipating that there'll be some follow-up discussion on that. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention on my presentation, but we'll get to questions later, but thank you very much.